reverse. Power that ended high. Time for takeoff. Go Bishop 2!
Nice.
Time for a light show.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. My name's Dark Revener and I like to play games, and today we're going to be talking about the new 5-star Yoimiya, who her best teammates are, and what her best team comps currently are. In this video, Yoimiya will be level 90, she will have her signature weapon, the Thundering Pulse, at R1, and her talents are currently sitting at 10-8-8. I have spent the past couple days on this video. It has taken a lot of time, and that's largely because Yoimiya is extremely versatile in terms of her team builds. This is really great because it means that you're going to have a lot of different options based on what you currently have on your account. I will be using both 4 stars and 5 stars on teams with Yoimiya, and I will also try to give any substitutions whenever possible if I do use a 5-star. If you do end up finding the video helpful at all, I'd really appreciate a like and comment down below. It really helps me push into the YouTube algorithm. Also, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're close to 4,000 subs, so if you want to join the crew, feel free to subscribe. But that's enough of that, let's jump right into the video. Alright, and so that we're all on the same page, I just want to quickly go over the characters that I think best match up with Yoimiya. Let's go through them one element at a time, starting with Anemo. So starting out with our Anemo characters, by far her best options are Venti and Kazuha. Both are able to shred enemy defenses and provide crowd control, and Kazuha's even able to boost her pyro bonus damage. However, if you don't have either of these two units and need a 4-star, the brand new 4-star Sayu as well as Sucrose will both get the job done. Unfortunately, Sayu doesn't offer much in terms of crowd control, but she does offer healing, which is nice. Next up we have the Geo units, and her best possible options are both Zhongli and Albedo. Albedo has surprisingly good synergy with Yoimiya, and both are able to provide much needed shields since Yoimiya is so prone to getting interrupted during her attack strings. However, if you don't have either of these units, you can replace them with Ningguang as a sub DPS, and Noelle as your shielder / healer. Moving on to Pyro, we have Hu Tao, Bennett, and Xiangling. I think that a lot of people are currently pitting Hu Tao and Yoimiya up against each other, but they actually have surprisingly good synergy since they both have cooldowns and need to go off-field, but can both take advantage of characters like Xingqiu when proccing things like Vaporize. Essentially, it is the epitome of why not both. However, if you are looking for supports instead of another DPS, Bennett and Xiangling are by far her best Pyro support units. Bennett is, well, Bennett, you know the spiel, and Xiangling is able to add extra fire damage to the comp as well as provide boosts to Pyro bonus damage as well as shredding enemies' resistance to Pyro. Moving on to Hydro, we have Child and Mona if you need a good sub DPS. Both are able to easily inflict Hydro onto enemies as well as boost Yoimiya's damage. And Xingqiu, of course, is one of her best possible supports because of his rain swords. As for Cryo, in terms of 5 stars, we have both Ganyu and Ayaka, who can be excellent dual DPSs for Yoimiya, since they apply so much Cryo. And if you're looking for Cryo support units, you can use Rosaria and Diona, because they provide a lot of Cryo off-field. And lastly, we have Electro, which works surprisingly well with Yoimiya. Beidou and Fischl are probably her absolute best options, but you can also use Electro MC if you do not have one of these two units. And I also want to make a note that I do think that when Ball releases, she's going to be one of Yoimiya's absolute best partners, so keep a lookout for her. Alright, now that we've talked about each individual unit, we can start putting them together into teams. I decided that the best place to showcase this would probably be inside Spiral Abyss, since that's the current hardest content in the game. I also thought let's start with a bang and show off what I like to call the Grand Fireworks comp. The Grand Fireworks comp is flexible, however there is a key component being Venti. Although Yoimiya is our main damage dealer, Venti is at the heart of this team comp because he's able to suck up small enemies and provide as much crowd control as possible while reducing resistances left and right. If you have to deal with a whole lot of small enemies, there is no better partner than Venti. And while you can replace him with characters like Sucrose or Kazuha, or anyone else that can do a little bit of crowd control, no one can really hold a candle to what Venti can accomplish with crowd control. On top of this, he is able to constantly proc Yoimiya's burst, and synergizes well with all elemental reactions and provides a lot of swirl damage. I personally chose to pair Yoimiya and Venti with Beidou and Xingqiu, but you can also substitute for characters like Bennett or even Fischl. So long as you're keeping to Yoimiya and Venti, this should work well. However, as soon as you're dealing with boss enemies or enemies that cannot be sucked up by Venti's ult, it's probably best to try a different team. Okay, but let's say that you don't need a lot of crowd control or your enemy will move out of Venti's ult. In this case, you can either replace Venti with another Anemo character that better suits your needs, or you can take an Anemo character out completely and replace them with another sub-DPS damage dealer. What I'm showing right now is the Fireworks comp, which became very popular with Child back in the day. However, you can replace Child simply with Yoimiya and it works just as well. Although you won't have complete control over which reactions you're going to get, you will still be proccing Vaporize or Overload fairly often. You can also make an adjustment to this team by substituting Xingqiu with Bennett. This way you can get a full-on healer onto the team as well as Pyro Resonance, and also provide you with much more consistent overload damage. I found that both teams worked very well, and the Electro Resonance was actually very helpful for keeping up bursts consistently. The nice thing about these team comps is not only are they very powerful, but they're also very accessible considering that all of the support units are actually 4 stars. If you're a free-to-play player and don't have a lot of 5-star characters at your disposal, or you want to use them on other teams, I think that these are really solid options. Alright, and while all the previous options are all great options, now we're moving on to what I actually personally enjoy most. I know that a lot of people won't want to play this way since they will want to get all the elemental reactions as possible, but I learned that Yoimiya actually does surprisingly well on mono fire comps. So the first team that I'm showing is Yoimiya, Kazuha, Zhongli, and Bennett. I actually did show this team off in my past video in my C0 damage showcase, so it should be no surprise that I'm showing it in this team comp video. The general idea is to amplify Yoimiya's damage as much as possible. We have Bennett for the attack boost, we have Kazuha to lower enemies' resistance to Pyro as well as give us Pyro bonus damage, and we have Zhongli to not only protect us with his shield, but to provide a 20% resistance down to Pyro damage. Overall, this team is extremely powerful, and anything that takes a lot of damage from Pyro is instantly going to be obliterated. Another team comp that I showed was actually a double Geo comp utilizing both Zhongli and Albedo. Like I said, Albedo actually has surprisingly good synergy with Yoimiya specifically, because he's so consistently able to proc her burst using his flowers. Not only this, but because Yoimiya attacks so quickly and his flowers can proc every 2 seconds, you're going to be utilizing his skill damage all the time. On top of this, you can even equip Albedo with a full Archaic Petra set in order to give an additional 35% Pyro bonus damage to Yoimiya every time you pick up a Pyro shield from his crystallized shields. This paired with the Geo Resonance, which gives you additional shield strength on top of extra damage while shielded, is just a really deadly combo. However, I also realized that these are extremely 5-star oriented teams, and so you can end up replacing Albedo with Geo Traveler or Ningguang if you don't have Albedo. You can also substitute Zhongli with Noelle. It won't be as good of a shield, but it is a shield nonetheless. And lastly, for the mono pyro damage teams, I would personally recommend Bennett, Xiangling, and an Anemo support unit. Obviously, these teams will not do well against Pyro enemies, however, against anything that is not Pyro, you're going to be bursting them down with a mighty Hellflame. As I mentioned earlier, Xiangling can boost Pyro damage, as well as reduce resistance to Pyro. Bennett is obviously the biggest attack booster in the game currently, and then you have an Anemo character to reduce resistances even further. Although this team isn't to my personal taste, I have to admit that it is extremely strong and very, very viable with endgame content. Also, one thing that I have to mention is that for all 3 of these teams, Kazuha is the best in slot Anemo Shredder. However, if you don't have him, you can use other Anemo supports and it still will work decently well. Alright, and next up we're going to be going over possible vape comps for Yoimiya. It's a well-known fact that vape comps are extremely powerful due to their high damage multipliers. And although Yoimiya does have a slight problem with ICDs, she still can take advantage of vape numbers every 3 hits of her normal attack. The first team comp that I want to show is actually Yoimiya in a dual DPS role with Child. These 2 units work so well for each other, and they really make up for each other's cooldowns. Essentially every single time that you're going to have to take one unit off the field, you can bring the other onto the field. They really help make up for each other's weaknesses. And then by pairing them with Xingqiu and Bennett, you're able to really double down on all the Vaporize damage that you can possibly squeeze out. You can also substitute one of these supports for an Anemo unit, but honestly I had the most fun while just going straight ham with Vaporize damage. Another iteration of this is actually by substituting Child with Mona. Mona actually fits very well into a sub DPS role for Yoimiya specifically because she's able to cause big vapes, as well as boost Yoimiya's overall damage because of her burst. This was a team comp that I wasn't quite sure of when I first started playing them, but as soon as I did, I realized that this is actually a very solid comp. And lastly, for the vape comps, I wanted to actually show Hu Tao and Yoimiya together. Like I said, I think that these 2 are constantly pitted against each other in terms of who's best, but they actually do have very good synergy. Like Child, who has to go off the field, Hu Tao has to do the same thing as soon as her skill is over. And so Yoimiya is able to switch onto the field and pick up the slack wherever pyro damage is needed. Pairing both of these units with Xingqiu, who can provide a lot of Vaporize damage, is a very viable team comp. I know that not all players will have both of these 5-star units available to them, but in case you do, I just want you to know that this team comp is very, very solid. Alright, and last but not least, we have the melt comps. I actually saved this one for last because this is actually probably the hardest team comp to actually use. It is extremely powerful and is very, very good at bursting down enemies quickly. However, since we do not have a cryo unit that can reliably apply cryo similarly to Xingqiu or Official, it's just much harder to set up actual Vaporize damage consistently. There are some ways around this, and that's why I wanted to share this to begin with, but I just want to warn you that the other team comps just might be a little bit more practical in endgame content. So one way that I discovered to get around the ICD issues was to have 2 cryo characters and an Anemo swirler. For example, I'm using both Diona and Rosaria for their bursts in order to apply cryo as consistently as possible, while utilizing Sucrose's burst in order to keep applying cryo whenever possible. You're then able to switch Yoimiya onto the field and blast down enemies with Melt. It can be a little bit tricky to make everything line up just perfectly, however when it does a lot of damage. However, if you aren't interested in having all supports and are more interested in a dual DPS role, you can easily substitute a character for either Ganyu or Ayaka. Both of these units are able to apply cryo very quickly and hit extremely hard. So anytime Yoimiya is on cooldown, you can switch to either Ganyu or Ayaka, deal a whole lot of damage, set up their bursts, switch back to Yoimiya, and pummel the enemy into oblivion with big melt damage. Like I said, although these can be a little bit hard to get everything to line up, when it does, it is so satisfying to see the enemies just melt away. Alright guys, and I think that's all that I have for you guys today. I hope that you enjoyed the video and learned something. If you did, feel free to share it with anyone else that has Yoimiya. Leave me a like and comment down below, I'd really appreciate it. And if you want to see more Genshin Impact content, feel free to subscribe, I'd love to have you here. Alright guys, that's all for now. Best wishes, bye.